what we're talking about is, at least at the moment, what we're watching. Now, there are many more forms of entertainment than that, but we want to stick on this one for this podcast. And I think that before we get into that, again, we need to lay a spiritual, or a biblical, I should say, foundation. Mm-hmm. We cited this last time. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. That is a verse to carry around in your pocket for your whole life. Here's one that might be a little bit more to the point. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That's Philippians 4:8. Okay, when you watch something on TV, you are inviting that thing into your mind. And if it's not true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, etc., then I would say there's a good chance you're not honoring this verse. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that we take in needs to be, sunshine and roses and marshmallows and cotton candy, right? There is room, I think, even in this verse to interact with things that are heavy and that are real and that are even harsh. I think that things like that can be true and honorable, and perhaps even more so for their reality. So I'm not saying let's just watch drone footage of the Amazon rainforest. It's not what I intend to say. But what I do intend to say is just honestly try to reflect your movie and TV choices through this verse and see what comes out.
Well, I think what that verse is saying is fix your heart and mind upon things that draw you upward. Mm-hmm. If you read through that list again, it is a lot of those descriptors are things that we could apply to God, and so are we being drawn upward toward God, or is our mind being drawn downward away from the things of God into the gutter, we might say? Mm-hmm. And is, here's the thing with entertainment. And I don't know why we have such a hard time grasping and applying this concept. It's a very widely accepted concept. Garbage in, garbage out. We are what we take in. We mm-hmm. become what we take in. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. if we're spending time looking at that stuff, let's go back to the exploitative TV stuff. If we're watching that all the time, then what happens when we see somebody on the street that is in a similar condition? We tend, rather to extend a helping hand, we tend to mock and make fun of that person for their problem, whatever that problem might be. Mm-hmm. That's how the stuff comes out of us. Mm-hmm. That is our immediate response. Mm-hmm. We tend to be mockers and jesters rather than edifying the people that we run into and lifting them up out of the mire. Mm-hmm. We tend to just push them back down through our actions. And I don't think we realize we're doing this. Mm-hmm. But this is what happens when we take this stuff in. This is why we need to be very guarded about our selections of entertainment. Specifically now we're talking about movies and TV. And ask ourselves the question. And I'm just sorry. People don't want to think about it. They're being entertained by it. Their flesh enjoys whatever they're participating in watching. And so they just say, I just don't think about it. I mean, it's no different than overspending or overeating or any other area of our life. We don't want to have the discipline to examine ourselves. Examining our heart can be a very troubling thing. When we turn the lens inward and say, why am I doing this? what is this? What kind of an effect is this having to me on me? Oftentimes we don't like what we see.
Yep.
Therefore, we just don't look.
Yep.
We turn a blind eye to it, and we just don't need to be doing that. If we're going to be impactful as Christians, then we have got to we've got to ask ourselves these questions. I think a lot of times people watch things that they would not watch with their 6-year-old. Okay. So I would say a good thing to do is ask yourself, if my 6-year-old can't watch this with me, why is that? And what is the content? And back to some of the stuff you said, okay, maybe it's a heavy thing that we need to see. I'm not even sure that would count as leisure time. To me, that's almost something that would be needful for us to examine, to go take action on, or something like that.
Right.
But just as a general guideline, I'm just thinking about this off the top of my head. I haven't thought through it, but when we're talking about drawing lines, if your 6-year-old can't watch it with you, is it something you need to be taking in?
Right. Well, as you say, there are heavy things which are not suitable for the mind of a 6-year-old that are not necessarily bad. Perhaps you could come at it from this approach. If you're sitting down watching something, ask yourself, am I hoping that my 6-year-old will watch this when he grows up? Do I want that for him? Or do I want something more? And maybe the answer to that question will be somewhat illuminating. I have a little piece of driving advice for anyone who wants it. You go where you look. This is something that the people who live in really icy environments especially need to be aware of. When you're sliding on the ice, what do they tell you? Look where you want to go. Okay, this is true of all of life. The Bible talks a lot about not turning to the right or to the left. Proverbs even says, let your gaze be directly before you. You think about it in terms of driving. You're riding down the road, everything's hunky-dory, and then suddenly there's an anomaly on the side of the road. It's a distraction. You look at it. What's the next thing that happens? You start headed towards it, right? I think that this is part of the reason that accidents can become these big pileups. Because someone gets in an accident, suddenly everyone's looking at it, and the next thing you know, they're about to hit it themselves, okay? It's true in life in general. What you're choosing to let in through your eyes, I'll say more generally, through your senses, that's where you're headed. Whether you like it or not, you are choosing to go there by choosing to look at it. It's a law of nature. I talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of how we direct our attention. And this is a very clear example. When you direct your attention at that TV screen and whatever images are being thrust at you, that's leading you somewhere. And you just need to sit down and ask, if I watch this movie, where is that leading me? And is that a place I want to go? Is that a place that God wants me to be?
Yeah, for sure. The song that came to mind as you were talking there is, I haven't heard it in a long time, but we sing it to our children. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little feet, where you go.
Careful, little ears, what you hear.
Yeah. And I can't exactly remember.
Careful, little mouth, what you say, I think is also.
Yeah, for the Father up above. I wish I could remember.
Is looking down in love, right?
There you go. So, I think, we're not living isolated lives away from God. He sees what we do. Why would we sing that to our children and then ignore it as adults? Is the principle true? Or are we singing falsehood to our kids?
Right.
This is a question. it's a valid question, is it not? Why do we sing that song? But then we think when we turn some magical age, we don't have to, we just ignore it anymore. And I think that's what we're advocating for. Be careful about what you watch and where you go and the things that you participate in. entertainment specifically right now. So yes, is it drawing us upward? Is it drawing us down into the gutter?
Mm-hmm. I'll give you one more diagnostic question to ask. This is a question that's very much lost, I think, on modern Christians, but I think was emphasized more in ancient times. Is this the movie you want to be watching when Jesus comes back? When Jesus comes...
There's your Christian question.
Right. When he comes through... But the Bible talks about be mindful of what you do, right? Because you don't know the day or the hour.
Well, it also says, there were the virgins that were watching. Right. They had their candles trimmed and their lanterns well fueled, and then you had the ones that were not. And so, yeah, it is definitely a biblical principle. Are we expecting the return of Christ, or are we living our lives as if it will never happen?
Right.
And I think, I think that's a question we need to ask.
Yeah. Right.
Hedonism, right, is informed. I mean, Paul said it, I think, in Corinthians, where he basically said, if there be no resurrection, then eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow you die.
Right.
And that is the way that we tend to live when we cut God out of the picture.
Yeah.
Death is coming. Then after death is judgment. But it's not just about eternity. It's about the impact we're having now. Mm-hmm. And, I think your question earlier when we were talking about the 6-year-old, when you said, do you want your 6-year-old to watch this when you grow up? I think that's a valid question that we need to ask ourselves just in general terms. Who is the person I want to be? What is my purpose? And if I'm watching this now, is there any reasonable expectation that my 6-year-old doesn't have a valid excuse to do it? And probably he's going to do it as soon as he gets an opportunity and you're not looking. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you have validated that it's a good thing to do.
That's right.
Through your actions.
Yes. Whether you said it's good or not.
Oh, yeah. You said that you don't need to be doing this, but I'm doing this. I mean, we all know that doesn't work.
Right. Now, look, I'll be the first to say that there are good movies. And I mean really good movies. Not just movies that are well made, but movies that have a good heart about them.
Sure.
You could probably say the same for some TV shows, although I'm aware of fewer of those. It's not just a question of watch movies or not watch movies. When you choose to watch a bad movie, it's not just that you're choosing to watch a movie, but you're choosing not to watch a good movie, right? Every movie you watch from here to the moment you die could be a good movie, and you would never run out of them, okay? Mm-hmm. So it's not a question of, well, I ran out of good stuff to watch, which... if that has happened anyway, that there might be some more questions worth asking. But yeah, it's choosing something bad over something good. There is good stuff out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me say one more thing before we move more particularly into the question of movies and television. When we ask ourselves these questions, different people are going to get different answers back. As we said last time, the finest lines are drawn at the level of the individual. Let us always be sensitive to the conscience of our brother. And just to remind everyone of a well-known passage, it is not good to eat or drink or do anything that causes your brother to stumble. Okay, maybe a movie or a TV show is okay for you. You have a clear conscience about it. You don't feel convicted about it, but your brother does. Okay, the answer in that case is never for him to come to you, but for you to go to him. Protect your brother's consciences.